Good morning, everyone. It is Monday, March the 9th, and we got a couple of big weather headlines to talk about. We have a growing severe weather threat east of the Rockies, and heavy rain and heavy snow moving into Washington State and Oregon. We have snowfall levels dropping to about 150 feet in the Seattle, Washington area, and even around Portland, Oregon, we could see snowfall levels drop to maybe 300 feet as we get into Monday night and Tuesday morning. But in total, we're talking about upwards of 4 inches of rain in and around Washington state, and perhaps even 4 feet of snow in the Cascades. But those are the headlines. Let's get into the details. Guys, the first thing I want to point out here early Monday morning into Monday afternoon is the large shortwave trough just west of the Baja in California. And that will begin to track off to the east with time as we move from Monday into Tuesday. And this will highly impact areas of the southern plains, extending north and east into the Midwest. In fact, as we track this forward in time, we can see where that trough begins to move over New Mexico and Texas as we get into late Wednesday afternoon. Areas along the eastern boundary of this trough will see the best forcing for thunderstorm activity. In fact, there looks to be a good chance of severe weather, especially on the day Tuesday. One of the things to keep an eye on is the jet stream as we move from Monday into Tuesday afternoon. And you'll notice that this area of blue and purple moves into not only the southern plains, but over the Midwest and the central Great Plains. Now, keep in mind, as we get into Tuesday afternoon, we'll have a strong frontal boundary here set up over the central plains in the Midwest, and alongside of it, we'll have a surface low over the state of Colorado. And that'll help to pull in some of this Gulf moisture, in fact, moisture-rich air here in the lower troposphere up into places like Kansas, Missouri, up into Illinois. And that will be running into the same area here that we see purples and pinks on the map. So jet stream winds of 120 to 140 miles per hour in the upper troposphere. And this will lead to an enhanced region of severe activity Tuesday afternoon, perhaps extending into Tuesday night for much of this area. Now, this is an image of the precipitable water during the day Tuesday. We can see the heavy moisture getting into Kansas, Missouri, Illinois, these same places we were just talking about in the previous map, providing ample moisture to the convective storms that will be forming Tuesday afternoon. In fact, looking at the convective available potential energy, or CAPE, we could see the potential for CAPE values of 2 to 3,000 joules per kilogram throughout Oklahoma, eastern Kansas, into much of Missouri, up into Illinois. And just keep in mind that CAPE values over 2,500 are considered significant and could lead to an enhanced risk of severe weather activity. I did want to share with you a potential sounding around St. Louis, Missouri, where we could see CAPE values of over 2,500 joules per kilogram, perhaps reaching as high as 3,000 joules per kilogram here as we get into Tuesday evening. One of the things to look for here is this purple dashed region. That is our mixed layer parcel path. And if that is to the right of our temperature as we rise up in the atmosphere, and our temperature being here the red line, the bigger the gap between the two, the larger our CAPE values will become. And this shows you the potential energy available to the atmosphere for these convective thunderstorms. Now, before we get to Tuesday, there is the potential for severe weather here over the South. And we're talking about anywhere between Arkansas, Louisiana, Mississippi, and Alabama. There could be a region of severe weather activity Monday afternoon. And this could continue even into Monday evening and Monday night here across the deep South. So, continuing for areas of Louisiana, Arkansas, Mississippi, and Alabama late into Monday evening. Now, as we step this forward in time, we can see that there's a break in the precipitation Monday night into early Tuesday morning, and then showers and thunderstorms begin to fire back up from Texas into Oklahoma as we reach about 12 p.m. Central Time. And then beyond that point, we can see where showers and thunderstorms really begin to fill in towards 4 p.m. and then eventually around 7 p.m. over the southern plains, extending into the Midwest. Now, keep in mind, we were seeing some of this enhanced thunderstorm activity, some of these larger CAPE values, for instance, over the state of Missouri, perhaps extending into western portions of Illinois as we get later in the day on Tuesday. And according to the European model, this particular run, we can see where showers and thunderstorms continue, perhaps into the overnight hours in the same region here. And maybe the threat will begin to shift off further east with time, but it's going to be rather slowly. We can see that even into Tuesday night, the precipitation continues. And even though we have probably just regular shower and thunderstorm activity, we could see additional threats beyond the strong wind and the hail and the potential for tornadoes. We could see flooding again over the Ohio Valley, just like we saw this past week in the Ohio Valley. In fact, the European model is showing heavy rain activity continuing into Wednesday early in the morning. Showers and thunderstorms could pop up again, even severe thunderstorms into Kentucky and Tennessee as we move through the day Wednesday. Now, taking a look at Monday here, we can see that the Storm Prediction Center has indicated a slight risk of severe weather over Louisiana, southern portions of Arkansas, and even parts of Mississippi and Alabama. So we're talking about from Shreveport, Louisiana, up to Little Rock, Arkansas, perhaps eastward into Jackson, Mississippi here on the map. But take a look at what happens on Tuesday here. We can see the severe weather shifts back to the west, and that's due in large part to that shortwave trough moving off to the east, tapping into that Gulf moisture, right? And then we also have that strong cold front diving out of the northern plains into the central plains at the same time. So all these ingredients are coming together for an enhanced risk of severe weather from Hannibal, Missouri, up into Springfield, Illinois, and even locations like Peoria. What's impressive here, though, is the slight risk of severe weather through much of central Texas, up into the city of Chicago for this event. Now, the second thing we talked about was the rain and snowfall over the Northwest. In fact, you saw rain and snow during the day Sunday. That's continuing into the day Monday. And as we step this forward in time into, let's say, Monday night, Tuesday morning, one thing you'll notice here, if we were to zoom into the city of Seattle, is that snowfall levels are dropping Monday night into early Tuesday morning. We're talking about snowfall levels dropping to maybe as low as 150 feet elevation in and around the Seattle region. For Portland, Oregon, we're talking about snowfall levels dropping to maybe 300 feet. And there is the potential for areas in and around these larger cities to pick up 1 to 3 inches of snowfall, especially in and around the Seattle area. Now, a lot of the mountain passes during the day Sunday picked up anywhere between 4 and 8 inches of snowfall. The snow will continue to pile up between now and Friday. And in fact, as we move towards Tuesday into Wednesday, it looks like Wednesday is going to be our biggest weather day, even though snowfall levels will continue to climb up towards maybe 2 and 3,000 feet through the day Wednesday. Areas above 3,000, maybe above 3,500 feet, could pick up feet of snow from this event on Wednesday. This is more of an atmospheric river that's moving on shore as we get into the middle part of this work week. And one thing you'll notice is that the rain and snow continues throughout the week. We're seeing heavy rain, heavy snow, and the Olympics in particular could see major flooding. Some of these areas will be picking up snow early in the week, and that will begin to transition to heavy rainfall. And we're not talking about 1 to 2 inches, we're talking about over 4 inches of rain potentially in the Olympic mountain range as we get towards the end of the week. And we don't want to forget about the states of Idaho and also western Montana. You guys could be picking up on some much needed snowfall here this week. And that could continue throughout the weekend here, especially in western Montana, where we could pick up maybe 1 to 2 feet of snowfall for you guys. Notice also that this rain and snowfall activity begins to die down in the state of Washington, at least briefly during the day Thursday. The rain begins to push southward into Portland mainly by this point. And by Thursday, we'll likely be seeing all rain in the city of Portland as snowfall levels rise above 3,500 feet. But even beyond Thursday, rain and snow moves back into Washington state. And there's no sign of this letting up between now and Friday. It looks like you're going to end up with several inches of rain and also some very heavy mountain snowfall, especially in the Cascades. But before we get into the totals, let's talk about the temperatures in this region. Now, as we get into Monday night, you'll notice that there's a lot of blue on the map here, extending from Washington state down into Oregon state and even northern portions of California. But this will change as we move throughout the week. You'll notice that warmer temperatures do move in for the afternoon. And then, especially by Wednesday, you'll notice that we have these warmer colors moving into the area, right? We see the yellows replacing those greens and the blues that we saw on the map. We can see temperatures, especially in Oregon State, rising to the 50s and 60s along the coastline, and even upper 40s in and around Seattle by the time we get into Wednesday afternoon. Now, beyond this point, temperatures will likely begin to fall off again in Washington state. We'll see that the warmest weather probably holds down to the south over the state of Oregon, and we'll have continued chances of rainfall probably beyond Friday into the weekend and perhaps even into next week for Washington state and Oregon state. But taking account of Sunday through Friday of this week, we're talking about totals of over 4 inches of rain. And this is keeping in mind that if we were to take the liquid equivalent of the snowfall in the Cascades, again, that would be over 4 inches of liquid equivalent rainfall for you guys. In and around the Seattle area, we're talking about maybe an inch and a half of rain this week. And then southward into Portland, Oregon, even, we're talking about maybe an inch and a half there as well. So a lot of beneficial rain and mountain snowfall in this region. Now, it looks like Wednesday in particular, we're going to have warmer air moving back into the region. So any snowfall we see Monday, Tuesday in the lower elevations will definitely melt by that point. In fact, here are those snowfall totals, and in the Cascades in particular, wherever you see the light brown here on the map, we're talking about 2 feet of snow. And the darker brown, we're talking about over 4 feet of snowfall. So again, this is taking account of the highest points in the Cascades, but some of these mountain passes could easily pick up 1 to 2 feet of snowfall as well. So what happens beyond the Tuesday, Wednesday timeframe for the U.S.? Well, it looks like we'll have that trough move out into the Great Plains and then eventually out to the east. And we can easily track that here on the map, pushing off to the east beyond Wednesday. And with it, we'll see colder temperatures dive into the northern plains first and then into the Midwest as we get into Thursday, eventually into the mid Atlantic and Northeast as we get into Thursday afternoon and into Thursday night. And you can kind of see how the trough here is negatively tilted towards the mid Atlantic as we get into Thursday night here. But this will be very brief. We'll see temperatures really cool down during the day Thursday in this region, but then it will rebound as we get into, let's say, next weekend. In fact, we can see that on the jet stream here with it pushing back to the north during the day Saturday and Sunday. Notice that the ridge has reestablished itself east of the Rockies over the Central Plains, extending eastward into the mid Atlantic. Now, what might be more important to people is the temperatures over the east. Again, we're seeing temperatures into the 60s and 70s in places like Chicago, Illinois, Detroit, Michigan, up to Albany, New York. These areas were seeing significant snowfall recently, right? Well, now we're seeing significant melting. And a lot of the snow that has accumulated over upstate New York into places like Vermont, New Hampshire, Maine, all that snow will begin to melt this week. We could see successive days in the 60s for daytime highs during the day Monday, Tuesday, and Wednesday this week. And let's just kind of play this out for you guys so you can see it here on the map. You can see how that warmer air begins to push off the coast as we get into Thursday afternoon. Again, we could see overnight lows in the 30s in places like Virginia and North Carolina as we get into Friday morning. So there's potential for frost and freeze warnings for these areas. So hopefully no one's planted anything yet for the spring. But this is a very brief cold spell for you guys. In fact, as you move into Saturday, you'll notice that the temperatures begin to warm back up into the 60s. And it looks like it's going to be that way through the weekend as well. Well, guys, I hope you enjoyed the forecast discussing the severe weather potential early this week from the Great Plains towards the Midwest, and that eventually tracking off to the east as we get into Wednesday. But we also have this heavy rain and heavy snowfall right over the Northwest that will continue through Friday. We're talking about 4 inches of rain in some places and up to 4 feet of snow in the Cascades. Guys, if you liked the video, please leave a like or subscribe. It really helps the channel. I look forward to having you guys around for the next video on Wednesday. Bye for now.